Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope real inspiration. For real. We're here at Capitol Grill in downtown Minneapolis. My guest today is Kim Valentini, CEO and founder of Smile Network International. The organization is 16 years strong and growing. And Kim, you have a very interesting foundation story.
Well, 15, 16 years ago, I was in my mid-40s and was at a point in my life where I was really trying to figure out what I wanted the second act of my life to look like. And I think we all go through that process in our life where we start to evaluate where we've been and where we're going, and we want the sum total of our life to add up to more than the parts. And I just was reassessing what I wanted to incorporate at a time in my life that filled my spirit. And the things that I had done in the first act of my life were no longer the things that motivated me and moved me. And so I started to make that transition and make those changes in the second act.
Was that scary, though? I mean, because you have this sure thing going, and to get into your 40s and not kind of continue down a path that you knew.
Oh, sure. I think it's scary for everybody. You know, there is the sure thing. There is the guaranteed income of a corporate job. There is the approval of family and peers and colleagues. And I think sometimes when we dream, oftentimes the people around us are not supportive of our dreams, not because they don't want you to think big and do well, but they're protective of you. I think people, especially close to you, they don't want you to fail. And so oftentimes people throw up more red caution flags than we do. And if we let those voices dictate our narrative, that can be detrimental. So I think it's just really trusting that little voice inside of you and following that voice, but also being strategic in taking the jump, taking the leap.
Speaking of taking that leap and dreams and vision, could you ever have dreamt Smile Network International would be what it is today?
No. In fact, I was just lying in bed 2 nights ago. And, you know, as a nonprofit, we always talk about the fact that we have a presence in 13 countries on 5 continents. And those statistics, you just kind of roll off your tongue. But the one statistic that really made me just lie in my bed the other night and just think about it was the fact that 16 years ago when we started this, the goal was to operate on 40 or 50 children a year, put together a few group of people who could participate in providing surgeries for a small number of children.
Cleft lip and palate
surgeries. And in those 16 years, we've done over 4,000 children. And in my wildest dreams, I never could have projected into the future where this would evolve to. And I always say the universe had a much bigger plan than I did from the very beginning. And from the first week, you know, where we hit the ground running, it just took off and snowballed, and we've been running to keep up with the direction of the universe for 16 years, but never could have imagined it.
You go into these 13 countries, 90 different missions, and you can't always do all the operations that are needed. That must be disappointing.
It is. It's, you know, you would think that the easiest part of what we do is to come to a country, a developing country where there is need, and to provide free surgeries for children. 100% of our surgical teams are volunteer. We have some of the most incredible, highly skilled medical professionals in the arena of cleft lip and palate in the world, and they're donating their time and their services. And so when you're bringing skilled surgeons and you're bringing resources and supplies and providing a surgery that changes the trajectory of these children's lives, you would think that that would be the easy part, right? But oftentimes what happens is egos get in the way. Sometimes foreign governments make it very challenging for teams like ours, and it's about pride. You know, I think one thing that we all have in common, regardless of our background, is that we're all a proud people. And we all want to be able to provide for ourselves and for our families and for our people. And sometimes when governments can't do that, they let their ego get in the way. And sometimes it becomes very challenging to provide these surgeries because of just crazy roadblocks that you wouldn't anticipate. And then there is always the need is greater than the services that are available. So it's not uncommon for us to go to a surgical site with 2 surgeons. We'll operate on 50 kids in 5 days and still turn away kids. And that's the hardest part of the job.
It's just the reality of what you're doing.
There's more need than there is resources available. So we make a long-term commitment to the communities that we serve. And if I can't fix your child this year, I want to leave you with hope that I'll be back next year and your child will be a high priority for us next year.
This is also grueling work. You've traveled the world. You're not the CEO and founder who just sits back home in Minneapolis where you started. You go all over the world. You travel on many of these missions. What is that like, seeing the work and supporting your teams firsthand?
I love what I do. Like, I never think of in the morning when I get up and go to work, I never think of it as I'm going to work. It's like I go to an adventure every day. I can't wait to get out of bed. I can't wait to get to the office. And sometimes my office is a desk in Minneapolis. And last week my office was the Andes Mountains with a group of 20 individuals from the Twin Cities area who walked the Inca Trail and participated in a trek to a sky lodge off of a cliff to raise money and awareness for Smile Network. And so every day is different. Every day is an adventure. And I just feel like I have the best job in the world. I really do. But people always say, "Oh, I would love to do what you do," and I'm like, "Well, you got to wait for me to move over first." I'm going to do this as long as I can do it.
What is your advice for people out there, whether it's in this type of work or another startup venture, if they really want to go out and follow their passion?
I think first and foremost, you do have to be strategic, that you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and just go for it, that there has to be financial planning. There has to be, timing and where a resource is going to come from. And I think, though, that you have to do all of that strategic work on the front side, but then it also gets to a point where at some point you just have to pull the plug. At some point you have to walk to the end of the diving board and just go for it and jump. I can tell you in my personal situation, I had been very fortunate that I had been working in the corporate world, and on my last run was there in the corporate environment on an employment contract. And the company that I worked for had sold, and I got bought out of an employment contract, which gave me this very unique opportunity to take a step back, to evaluate where I had been, where did I want to go, and also have some financial security and time to do that. And I don't think that happens that often for people. And thank God I had that employment contract payout, because Smile Network, when I did take the plunge, when I did take the jump, would immediately go from 5 hours a week to 55 hours a week, and it would be 7 years before I took a salary. We would hire staff, bring on other people, pay salaries, but it was 7 years before I could. And so I think, getting back to your question, Roshini, about what advice is, certainly be strategic, but also be realistic, because your financial commitments and your family commitments and all the demands of our personal life don't stop when we change directions. So it's how do you keep all those balls in the air and do it smart and not burn out and have fun while you're doing it.
And how do you not burn out? Because you do have to have refresh time and time away from the work.
I love to travel, and I think for some people travel is really stressful. For me, I kind of consider myself a professional traveler. I can leave home with for 3 weeks with a little overnight bag and be just fine. And traveling, even when I'm working, even if I have 16, 17, 18 Inca Trail participants, or we're walking the Camino in Spain with me, I'm outdoors. It's fresh air. It's sunshine. It's camaraderie. It's friendship. And that's really what refuels me. And every year, for example, I walk the Camino in Spain. Every September, we do a hike from Portugal, the tip of Portugal, to Santiago de Compostela. And it's a fundraiser for Smile Network. And I walk 100 miles in 6 days. This year, I'm doing it back-to-back twice. So I'll do 200 miles in 12 days. And whenever I come back from that trip, I always say, okay, for every year I can do this, I've got one more year of Smile Network. If I can walk 100 miles in 6 days, I can do another year of Smile Network. But that really rejuvenates me.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
That rejuvenation and refresh is even built into your work.
It's a gift.
Yeah,
it's a gift.
Because that doesn't happen for everyone.
It doesn't. And, I found, so 15, 16 years ago, when I was kind of going through this whole process, evaluating where I wanted the second act of my life to go, I was had the opportunity on my first day of unemployment to catch an Oprah episode. And you can't make this stuff up, right? So on my first day, I get the kids off to school, and at 4 o'clock, I'm still lounging around in my pajamas, something I never did. And I remembered that Oprah came on at 4 o'clock. And she opened the show by saying, if you're a woman in your 40s and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life, this is your show. And it was like she was in the living room with me. She had an author on that day by the name of Po Bronson, who had written a book called What Should I Do with My Life? And it basically was Bronson's assertion that you spend the first half of your life preparing for what you're really meant to do in the second half of your life. Regardless if that's a career in the corporate world, if it's being a mom, a father, a teacher, a mentor, that those things all lead you to your real purpose. And that night, I went out and bought a copy of the book, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, after I had read the book, I was making a list of what I wanted to incorporate into the second act. I would come back across that list about 5 years ago. I had tucked it in the book. I had forgotten about it, and it wasn't a long list. But I realized that the 5 or 6 items on the list were all things that had occurred or evolved under the umbrella of Smile Network. And that was never the intention. But I wanted to travel more. I think I have something like 160 passport stamps in the last 10 years, something crazy like that. I wanted to travel more. I wanted to open up a little art gallery or retail store. We have that now as a fundraising arm of Smile Network. We bring goods from around the world that we purchase from economically impoverished women who are making really unique, high-quality goods. We bring them back to the U.S. We resell, and 100% of the profit goes back to funding more surgeries. The other things were I wanted to pursue my love of photography. I wanted to be able to engage my children in my work. All of these things evolved under the umbrella of Smile Network, and they were really things that I was passionate about, things that brought purpose to my life. So it's just the whole process has been such a gift.
Let's talk about your children for a moment. They're grown, but they have gotten involved in your business. Yeah. I'm guessing that means a lot to you.
It does. It does. My kids are the most important part of my life. They were about 10, 11, 12 years old when I first started Smile Network. So at a very young age, our spring breaks and our summer vacations and a lot of our holidays would revolve around surgical missions. And it's not unusual for my kids to spend 2 weeks in Peru with me when they were in elementary school. And that their engagement or involvement in Smile Network and working with impoverished people throughout the world, I really think has changed the trajectory of their life, and it has also developed them into the people that they are. They're caring, they're compassionate, they see the world, I think, through a different filter than a lot of young adults in the United States. Certainly we live in a privileged society. My children went to private school, and I don't always think the world of private school is the real world. And so it was a big contrast for them, their private school setting, to being in a third world hospital. And, when they got tired, they'd find a mat, they'd crawl in, they'd, curl up in a corner and take a nap or circulate amongst the patients. It made them really beautiful human beings with big, compassionate hearts, and in their own way, each of them is continuing with that. That means a lot to me.
That is amazing. You have traveled to so many places. So I asked this question, and maybe it's not the best one for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there a place that you have not traveled to yet where you want to go?
I have an interest in exploring the Canary Islands. That's kind of a selfish interest in that I love trekking and hiking and sunshine, and I've heard that there's some great treks in the Canary Islands, so it's kind of on my calendar this year to do a site inspection in the Canary Islands and see if we can't put together an adventure travel trip for Smile Network. We've done things like hiking Mount Kilimanjaro, horseback riding in Ecuador, the Camino, the Inca Trail, and I think this is kind of next on the list, the Canary Islands. I also have this desire to go to Bali. It just sounds very exotic and beautiful, and I'm going to Croatia in the fall. My daughter, she's 23 years old. She has a marketing and business background, and she has excelled in the area of the tech field. And she's been asked to speak at an international conference in the Ukraine and in Croatia. So I'll be
fabulous honor.
I know. She called me one day when she had the offer, and it was pretty cute. She said, "Mom, I have this opportunity. Would you like to go with me?" And I would get a speaker's fee. And she's like, "But I just can't decide if this is something I want to do." And I'm like, "Okay, roll that one back. Let's talk this one through." I said, "You're 23 years old. You've got an invitation from an international tech conference. You're getting paid a speaker's fee. You're getting a trip to the Ukraine and Croatia. Like, you're going to learn to love public speaking."
Love?
Yeah, exactly. If you don't like it, you're going to learn how to like it. So I love just exploring new places, but there's also something really amazing about going back to some place familiar. I returned this week from Peru. This is probably my 30th trip in 16 years to Peru, and every time I go, it feels a little bit like coming home. And the acquaintances that I've met along the way have become friends and family to me, and it's nice to have those pockets in the world where it feels like home.
Well, Kim Valentini, thank you for spending time with us today, and wishing you many, many more years of Smile Network.
Oh, and Roshini, I just want to say, you have been a very loyal supporter. You have danced with the stars on our behalf. You have emceed our galas. You have been one of our biggest cheerleaders. You have included us in the years in your events, on your radio show, and this work doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it happens because of people like you, and I really mean that. As much as we appreciate our doctors and our medical teams and our donors, there are those people like yourself who help us raise awareness and funds, and that's invaluable. And I just want to thank you for making us one of your heart projects.
Well, thank you. It's been my honor. And on that note, let's give people the website so they can find you easily.
smilenetwork.org. O-R-G.
Until next time, keep it real.